Welcome back to AgriTalk, and today we are talking about aquaculture, and with me is Julie Muyela, who is the Associate Director at Lattice, and she's been telling us a lot about what you need to know to start a successful aquaculture venture. On this second part, Julie, we've had Kenya imports fish from China, which sometimes I don't think makes sense to me, unless you can help me see the sense in that. Is it that the demand here is so high and we produce very little?
It's a very good question. So when you look at Kenya and you look at the per capita consumption of fish, it actually is half the average global, which is around 4.5 kilograms. Now that's really low. And to your point, you know, is it because we don't is it because we don't like fish? No, we love fish. So it comes down to the supply and demand. So there is a high demand, but there is a low supply of it. And we touched previously on, you know, like the wild fish and what are the challenges that have resulted to, you know, a depletion or a reduction in the wild fish. That could be, that's one of them, one of the factors that's resulted to the low supply. And that's where now the Chinese fish come in. Is it ideal? No. But it's coming in to address the shortage in supply. And so why is there a shortage in supply? So in addition to the environmental factors around, you know, the wild fish, what we've talked about overfishing, pollution, climate change, there is also, you know, the cost of production, which we've talked about earlier. There is economies of scale. So if you're producing at a minimal scale, your cost is going to be high. And so, you know, the production environment in China or other countries who would be, you know, bringing in their fish is very different from ours. And so there is need for us to think about how then, what are the kind of interventions that we can have within the country, because this is an untapped market. It's such an untapped market that, you know, those who are thinking about interventions in this would actually thrive. And so it's more about, you know, the right mind sitting in the room and figuring out what do we need to do to actually make sure that the local sector is growing, and so it then minimizes the importation of fish going forward.
Okay. But why China? Why not any other African country?
Well, I guess it's cheap. It's when you look at the cost of fish from China and you compare to even the cost of fish from here, it's way cheaper to bring in the fish from China. So it all, as I mentioned earlier, it all comes down to the production environment. So for them, it's more, you know, the production is cheaper as compared to other countries. But I guess it's also being aggressive, right? So they're very aggressive, and that's why they're coming in faster. But there is something around the policies as well that we probably need to look at. You know, to be able to address that question. Why China? Why not somewhere else? What are we doing to actually minimize the importation of fish and rather, you know, increase the production from within?
Okay.
Yes.
Do you think it will have an impact on entrepreneurs who are trying aquaculture?
It has a huge impact, and it all comes down to the, you know, you've gone through your production, you've incurred all these costs, and then you go to the market and you look at your fish versus, you know, the fish from China, and the fish from China is coming in at even 30% less of a cost cost as compared to yours. So that is going to be taken up more than yours. So sometimes, you know, as consumers, we then fail to think about quality. You know, sometimes we are really driven by price as compared to other effects or other, you know, whatever is going to happen as a result of you taking up a product that's cheaper than another product.
Okay. There's one question that people always ask, that they can only take fish from Lake Victoria, and that fish from any other part is not that sweet. What is the logic behind that?
So it's a very valid point, and it comes down to, without getting much into the technicalities of farming, it usually is comparing, you know, fish from the lake vis-a-vis fish from the farms. So there's a last step that farmers, that pond farmers, some of the pond farmers fail to take, and that is spudging. You know, when you have fish in a pond, and you take them directly from the pond to the market, there is a certain taste that they have, and for you to do that, for you to be able to eliminate that, it's called purging. It's a process that's called purging, where you have to literally clean out the fish before you actually harvest them and take them to the what is it called, to the market. So that is not a process that's required for wild fish, but when you have the pond, and it all comes down to, you know, the chemicals and the environment that they're thriving within, and the step before the market that actually plays a big factor towards that kind of a conception.
Okay.
Yeah.
Earlier on, you talked about financial institutions having a problem to advance finance to aquaculture players. And you talked about data being one of the biggest problems. They don't have enough data. So how important is it for those who are already in this business and those who are joining to make sure that they start creating this data in terms of keeping records?
It is very, very important, and that's one of the things that we're actually advocating for in the academy. A couple of months ago, we actually did a study on the data-driven approach towards tilapia farming, and it was more about, we selected a few farms and then showed them how to collect data, provided them with the right equipment to collect data. So be it data on the water, the temperature, the pH, oxygen level, you know, even the number of fish that you're producing within any particular production cycle. And we realized that as a result of that, they were then able to make an economic sense of where the business is going. So what usually happens with some of the fish farmers is, you know, you've gone through, you've harvested your fish, you've taken them to the market, you've sold them. If I was to ask you, how much did you sell? But how much for you to sell that, for you to produce that, how much did it cost you? If you're not able to answer that question, how are you able to run a commercially viable business? So it comes down to data and record keeping is really, really important, because it enables you to understand where you've come from, where you're going, and what the journey between where you've come from and where you're going. How has that journey been? What are the things that you need to improve on? What are the success stories that you then need to take to the next level? Because if you don't have that, then you're not able to stand in front of a financier and say, you know what, I can run a successful business. Because they're going to ask for your financial records. They're going to ask for your production records. And if you don't have that, then you're not going to be able to get access to financing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think either the government or the county governments are doing enough to help the sector?
So the devolution has played a big role, because we know that several counties have aquaculture within their CADP. So when on 7th of May, actually a few weeks ago, when we ran the best farmer competition and we included the counties within, we actually reviewed the CIDPs for the counties, right? And we identified several counties that actually have aquaculture within their CIDPs, and that for me is admirable. That's a first step to the right direction. And then, you know, some of them have of course taken it to the next level, where they are thinking innovatively about how to do aquaculture. So it can't be business as usual. It's more about what are the things that we need to do to actually take it to the next level. So I believe that the devolution has played a big role towards the development of the sector. Still a long way to go, but I think we're heading towards the right direction.
So as the other day, just yesterday, someone sent me some statement. The government is trying to reintroduce 4K club to schools. And I don't know, is it the right move now to reintroduce 4K club? Do you think it will help young people who are still in school learn more about agriculture and maybe even aquaculture, and even learn these things you're talking about, that they need to have information, they need to know where my market is before even I start the venture?
Yes.
Do you think it's a move in the right direction?
I think it's a move towards the right direction. And I'm taking, you know, say from the primary education all the way to fast forwarding it to the higher institutions of learning. And you look at the uptake of agribusiness and particularly aquaculture. If you go to a higher learning institution right now and say, take for example, you know, you go to Egerton or even go to Nairobi University and you look at the number of students that are enrolling for aquaculture or even agribusiness compared to commerce or medicine or, you know, all the other fancy, you know, it's not considered a fancy kind of a course. When you look at that, then it's more about why is that happening? Why don't we have enough students in the higher learning institutions taking up such courses? And it comes down to, you know, what is the perception they've seen as they've been growing up, you know? So introducing the 4K clubs is important because then that awareness is created from an early stage. You know, as you're going through life, you know that there's agriculture, there's levels of agriculture, you know, aquaculture included in there, but there's also other disciplines that you can actually think through, so that as you get to a particular point, then you know you have options, right? Then you appreciate, because we can't do without agriculture in Kenya. It is such a fundamental aspect of our economy, but that I feel that we are not taking up as much effort to improve it as we should.
Okay. There's a very good word you used, agribusiness. And I remember going through school, I never had that word. When we used to talk about agriculture, it was just about the hard stuff, getting a jembe and breaking your back in the farm.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one of the reasons why young people don't want anything to do with farming.
Yes.
They've seen their farmers, their parents suffer over the years, and they've not really made it. Because along the value chain, there are also a lot of challenges. Middlemen, conmen,
Yes.
all those.
Yes.
Do you think if now we point them in the right direction and tell them it's not just farming, it is agribusiness, look at it as a business, do you think that will make the young people have a different mental?
Definitely, and I think they already have. You know, when you look at you know, agriculture today versus agriculture, you know, that was practiced by our parents, our grandparents, the young generation, the youth who are getting into agribusiness, who are getting into aquaculture, are actually getting into it with a business mindset. And that is because of the kind of training that they're getting, you know, be it in university, be it in institutions, you know, practical training institutions like Aquaculture Academy. They're actually getting that, and it's giving them more awareness to understand that we don't have to do things as was done yesterday, right? Because how it was done yesterday may not have been as successful as it should be. And so it's more about them learning what are the new things, what are the kind of technologies, what is the, you know, the business mindset that you need to have to actually make this thing work. Because for most of them, it's either that or nothing, right? So most of them are getting into entrepreneurship and looking at agribusiness as part of their entrepreneurship. So it's either, you know, you make it work or it doesn't work. So we're going to do whatever it takes to make it work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Earlier on, you talked about what you do at the academy. And one of the things you mentioned was training of extension officers. Why is it important that you train extension officers?
So it comes down to the knowledge that the extension officers are then going to disseminate to the farmers, to the local farmers. And if the knowledge is not as revolutionized or as advanced as it should, then we don't expect the production or the growth of the sector to be as fast as it should. So it's important for the extension officers to really understand what are the things that the smallholder farmers are actually having as a challenge, you know, and how then does training come in to narrow that gap, and how then do they take that training to the various counties that they're actually part of in terms of just disseminating that information.
Okay.
So it's really, really important for them to be part of the training.
Okay. And do you think there is a gap out there of extension officers?
I believe so, and I think it's more about the kind of feedback we've received since pre-launch and even post-launch. where, you know, as a result of talking to the various, you know, the agricultural officers and what have you, it's coming out clearly that there is need for the next level. So it's not just about going and having a group of farmers, you know, meet in a market somewhere and telling them this is what you need to do. It's coming down to you're telling them this is what they need to do, but also showing them this is how you do it. So it's not just about the what, but it's about the how. And the how cannot be theory. It has to be practical. And so that is really critical for the extension officers to also be aware of.
Okay. And how important is it for a farmer to have an extension officer visit their farms as often as possible?
I believe it is, and it's more about just looking at where the gaps are and how the extension officers can assist with bridging that gap, right? So what are the best practices? You know, the extension officers would tend to visit several farmers, right? And they tend to pick the best practices, what's working, what's not working, and how then is this going towards the development of the county, right? So when an extension officer comes to your farm, I don't know how frequent it is, but if an extension farmer was to come to my farm, I would actually maximize on tapping into the knowledge that they have, tapping into the experience that they have, and just seeing how they can help with regards to improving my productivity.
Okay. I know we've mentioned here and there about the academy that Lattice is running. What does it take for one to join the academy?
So it takes interest, right? So I think previously we were talking about, you know, the farmers who have tried it and flopped. That's not the end of the world, you know. It's more about, I believe that in life you need to learn about, you make the mistakes. What are the mistakes you've made and how do you learn from them, right? So when you look at existing farmers and even past farmers who are no longer farming, and then looking at the upcoming farmers, it's more about figuring out where are you at, right? What are you looking to do? What are the gaps in terms of knowledge? What skills do you need to take your business to the next level? And so that's where the academy comes in. Because when you look at the courses that we're offering, in as much as it covers, it's a whole range of courses, we will be tailoring courses based on the needs of the trainees, right? So we're not going to teach you on water quality if you know that, while you really don't know how to, you know, manage a hatchery. So we're going to focus on your weaknesses or on your gaps to make sure that by the time you're leaving, you actually are upskilled enough to take your business to at least the next level. So the way the academy is operating right now is we have very little investment on brick and mortar because we're partnering with the established fish farms. And that's because of the practical element that we require for the training. So we cannot just sit in Nairobi and say, you know, we're going to train farmers to be better fish farmers and to be, you know, aquapreneurs, and just come sit in a room and have a theoretical training. No, we have to go to the farms, and we are currently partnering with two fish farms. That's Kamuthanga, which is based in Machakos, and there's Juliet, which is based in Homa Bay. So those two partner farms are located in very strategic areas where they can be accessed by various people across the country. So we would expect the students to come in, the trainees that is, to come into the farms for us to then train them on the practical elements of aquaculture. So in addition to those two partner farms, we also have a mobile van, so more like a mobile model of training where we would go to where the need is. So an example is, you know, if you have a community-based group that has, say, 50 or so members that require training, and they already have an established pond somewhere where we can actually go and undertake the training, we would go there using our mobile training vehicle to actually make sure that we are meeting the need where it is.
Okay. What are the costs of joining the school?
So that's a good question, and the cost varies because the length of the courses vary. So we will be having 2-day courses, which are ideally basic, and so the expectation is, you know, if you come in today for a 2-day course, you're going to come back again for the next lessons, and then you're going to come back again, and you're going to come back again. So we have a 2-day course, we have a 1-week course, which would be more intense, and within those, that's pretty much the practical element of the training. And then we have an advanced one and a mobile one. So the costs vary, and it's more about the tailoring of the courses to fit particular needs. So if it is standard courses, there is a price for that. So if it is tailor-made courses, there's a cost for that. So for that information, we have it on our website, and you can check our website at www.foodtechafrica.com/Aquaculture Academy. So there is more information on that, and we have contacts who would be able to work with you to be able to tailor the courses that you need, and then be able to price that for your needs.
Okay. As we wind up, what do you think is the future of aquaculture in Kenya?
I believe that this is a sector that has a huge amount of potential, and it just requires a different kind of thinking. It can't be business as usual. It requires people thinking holistically, right? So not just people thinking within the silos as far as the value chain is concerned. It requires a thinking from an ecosystem perspective. Thinking, if the academy is going to train you to be a better farmer, for you to run a commercially viable business, then what? We need to answer the then what questions at every stage. So if that happens, then it requires you to have a market for your business. Then what? You're going to be able to, as you generate more revenue, you need quality seed, you need quality feeds. Who are the right suppliers to work with? So it's kind of like a vicious cycle that goes round and round, and just making sure that you have the right players within the ecosystem. If we had the right players within the ecosystem, including financial institutions that are anxious and yearning for this sector to grow, we would go to the next level.
Okay.
So there is a lot of potential, a lot of untapped potential at every stage, right from production all the way to the market, all the way to access to finance that is yet to be tapped.
Okay. Thank you very much, Julie, for sparing time to be with us. I'm sure our viewers have learnt a lot today about aquaculture, and I'm sure from today onwards you will hear more about people wanting to join your campuses. For our viewers back at home, you've heard what it takes to be an aquaculture entrepreneur, what it takes. And the good thing is there's an academy you can attend, and Lattice will be in a position to help you with that. That is it from us today. Until next time, goodbye.